welcome to Navigate 22, and we are overwhelmed to have you. So nice to have you, and really appreciate you spending some time with us and educating, telling people what's new and what is trending in L&D. So I will quickly introduce yourself, and then we can take it from there. So Shannon is owner of Learning Rebels. She's a learning strategist and an international speaker. Her focus is on learning disruption. I would like to know about it a little more. What you mean by that? She has in total 25 years of experience and developing successful infrastructures and providing upskillings to L&D professionals, L&D departments in North America and Europe. She has been instrumental in supporting the learning technologies, micro-learning, learning reinforcements, and so on. You can also find her blog, which is rated top 100 blog or top 100 blogs on Learning Rebels on learningrebels.com. So before we start, can you just explain what you mean by learning disruption? What do you exactly mean by that?
Well, what we mean by that is thinking outside of status quo. Oftentimes, L&D professionals, they get stuck, and it's the way we've always done it, right? Quote unquote. We've always done it that way. They tell me I have to do it this way. And what we encourage L&D professionals is to step outside of that box. Think beyond classes, think beyond courses, and think about people. And how can we connect people to lessons to business goals? And so we just take a slightly different point of view when it comes to creating learning initiatives and helping businesses achieve their overall goals.
As we have been passing through this turmoil of a couple of years of COVID, and then the world is turning upside down every now and then due to various reasons, right? So, in your opinion or in your experience, what exactly has affected, or how the learning has affected in today's post-pandemic in a way world? What are your takes on that?
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Some of the shifts that we're seeing now were shifts that we were advocating for prior to the pandemic. Learning initiatives that were based off of blended learning or were based off of virtual training, right? And we were advocating for these types of modalities prior to the pandemic. Now that we are through it, not completely through it, but now that we're starting to see perhaps some light at the end of the tunnel, even more people are and organizations are focusing now more on blended and virtual learning, because that's the way we had to do it when we were in the heart of all of this. And so now businesses are seeing that this sort of modality really can work. We don't have to bring people in from all corners of the globe and put them into a face-to-face training class any longer. They're seeing that there are real benefits to using a blended modality or strengthening their learning reinforcement efforts, or making better use of micro-learning, right? So they're seeing all of this really happening around them, and they're going, oh, yes, you know what, that can work. So I'm seeing more and more L&D professionals and businesses stick to and doing better about their blended learning initiatives and virtual training initiatives.
All right. Yeah, that makes sense. And I mean, the entire phase of the time that we are going through currently, I mean, it just doesn't make sense to bring a lot of people together for just for a training. Maybe they can. Yeah.
It never did.
Yeah.
That's the thing, and I think that is that's the epiphany that a lot of businesses are having right now, is that they're seeing all of the money that they wasted on one-off training events where they brought a lot of people together and nothing sticks. And now they're seeing, oh, maybe we can do this differently. And if we do it differently, maybe then the training will stick. And you know what? It does. So when you have a better plan for learning reinforcement outside of the four walls of a classroom, we can see real dynamic changes.
Should we say that we are shifting from a formal classroom training to something else? What are your thoughts on that?
I don't think that formal training is ever going to go away. I think how we conduct that formal training is going to shift. There's nothing wrong with hosting a classroom event.
Mhm.
Where we go wrong is where we put all of our eggs into that one basket, where we say, we're going to bring everybody together, and this is going to be the end all be all. And everyone's going to leave and they're going to, quote unquote, know what to do, or the behavior is going to shift. That mentality is what is changing. And so now what we're seeing here is that if you have formal classes, they need to be anchored in or surrounded by having solid learning reinforcement, either at before or after, as well as then having those opportunities to build communities around those classes. So how are we building a social construct around classroom events, if you will? So that means when people leave the class, how are they then communicating with each other? How are the lessons being carried forward? So the formal training itself is not going to go away, but how we arrange learning reinforcement and how we arrange our continuing training is what needs to be shifted and what is going to shift.
If you could just deep dive a little bit on what do you mean by training reinforcement and these
Sure.
training communities?
So when I talk about learning reinforcement, I'm talking about where we have lessons, right? We have lessons in any formal training course, whether that is a virtual training program, a live face-to-face training program, or even an e-learning program. So those sorts of formal trainings. So what needs to happen afterwards is that, are we supporting those lessons after the fact? And how are we supporting those lessons? So what we advocate is a drip feed approach, not unlike
Mhm.
marketing, right? So you have this drip feed approach afterwards, where you're sending an email to them, perhaps. Let's just say email. So we're sending an email to the participants afterwards that say, here's a 2-minute video that reinforces XYZ lesson that you learned. So, and here's an article for you to read, and here's a checklist for you to use. And don't forget this lesson. And so you send out several of those emails over the course of several weeks after the training event occurs. So this way, people are practicing retrieval, right? So when we think
Right.
about the psychology of learning, practice retrieval is a key element of that. So people store that information and then they pull it out of storage, they use it, and then they put it back into storage. So every time that email shows up and they open up that video, that knowledge that's sitting in the back of their head then comes to the front. They use it for a little while and then they put it away. But what we do is that we strengthen those ties. So every time we bring that sort of learning reinforcement to people, learning gets stronger. We connect lessons to learning to action.
Interesting.
And so that's what happens after the formal training event. And that's the part that's missing, right? And that's the disruption that we talk about. Is it's not just the classroom, it's what happens after the classroom.
What in your experience or what in your opinion is the benefits of having these communities build out post training or during the training sessions? How do
Mhm.
they impact?
Well, learning comes from the networking, right?
Mhm.
And so
Yeah.
think about when you go to a conference, if you go to a live conference, you spend a lot of time talking in the hallways,
Yeah.
right? Right. And you plan breakfast meetings, you have cocktails afterwards, or you meet afterwards and you talk about what happened during the course of the day, right? And so every time you have those conversations with your peers and with your network, again, the learning strengthens. And what we advocate is building communities around the classes. For example, whenever we do corporate workshops, we
Mhm.
always put everyone into Slack. So we use Slack. And so this way, people who are participating in the learning program, in the workshop, they have this place to ask questions of each other, to share their work, to continue their projects forward, to be able to talk to each other about their barriers or quick wins, right? And so every time they have these sorts of conversations, the stronger the learning becomes. So we're encouraging people to have those sorts of communities that connect to their classes or to their workshops. Or if you think about sales universities, right? Sales enablement universities or leadership universities, if you have a community that supports the people within that university as they progress through, you've got coaching opportunities, you have mentoring opportunities, you have places for people to do action learning sets. So these sorts of communities really do help take learning in a whole different direction.
How can we make more impact? Is it still a cost center in the organization, or is it looked at as a employee success mechanism these days? What have you seen?
Well, yes and yes. We are a cost center. Let's be very realistic. We
Mhm.
do not make money,
Mhm.
unless you have an outside external customer.
Right.
Training does not make money. Training costs money. So we are a cost center. That means then that we have to be realistic about what we do. And this is why it's so critical that we connect learning to business goals and business KPIs. So this way we can show that we are adding value, right?
Yeah.
And this is where, we have this kind of vicious circle where we say that um, the business wants training, but we do not do a training needs analysis. And because we don't do a training needs analysis, the training that we create does not have impact and is not relevant. So then the business thinks we don't have value. Then the business cuts HR or training payroll. Then we don't have time to do a training needs analysis. So that circle goes around and around and around. Now, if we add business value at the very front, if we ask the business, what does this training do to help move forward your business goals? So is
Mhm.
this going to
Mhm.
help build revenue for your sales team? Is this going to increase profit? Is this going to decrease safety incidences? If so, how and why and where? How do we get there from here? Then what you're doing is that you're proving that you have value. And once you start proving you have value, the business will start fighting for you. They'll say, no, don't cut the training department because the training department adds value to the business and it helps us from spending money in other areas. Right. And
Right.
so this becomes the critical part. And oftentimes L&D will say, well, we don't have a seat at the table. We don't have a voice. I say, don't worry. Don't worry about that proverbial seat at the table. That's not the
Mhm.
concern. The concern is, how do we simply add value? And we don't have to have a seat at the table to add value.
Yeah.
The issue is demonstrating value. So are you tracking the right things? Not the butts in seats matrix of how many people showed up, or the smile sheets of how many people liked our classes. Those matrix mean zero in the real world. They mean zero. So now it's how
do they still have smile sheets?
Sure they do. But you know what? Smile sheets still, and for those who don't understand what smile sheets are, we're talking about those level 1 evaluations, right? You know, you're talking about those surveys that you hand out at the end of every class, right? And so the problem with those is that we always ask the wrong questions. You know, we ask the questions of how was lunch, or was the room cold? And, you know, those are the wrong questions, you know, or they become a vanity matrix for the facilitator. You know, so, I loved my facilitator so much. And the facilitator's like, yay, they liked me. But you know what? Liking and learning don't match. So now what we need to do is we need to leapfrog over to, you know, if you think about the Kirkpatrick model, we want to leapfrog over to what is level 3. And we want to see what sort of productivity has occurred because of the training classes. Are people using the skills that were taught? And if so, how is that improving the business? That's the matrix that matters. And so a lot of times we say, well, we can't measure that. And you can't measure that if you haven't planned for it. Right. So if you built a training course without thinking about the business matrix, then there's no way you're going to be able to back into that. So you have to be able to start with it. So you start with that mindset of, how am I impacting business? How is this training program impacting business? When you start with that mentality, then at the end of the day, you can measure value. And when you can measure value, you become a cost center that is valuable. Then people don't mind spending money.
Exactly.
They don't mind giving you money. Right? Because I have yet to come across a business leader that said, you know what? I don't want more revenue. I don't want more profit. No one has ever said that. So if your training can show that you are indeed impacting those particular areas, then you don't have to worry about a seat at the table.
Just a small corollary question on this. So, do you think that it is easy enough to get those business objectives in place before you start conducting the trainings, or it's going to be a heavy, hard exercise for the people in L&D departments?
That's a good question. I don't think it's hard. It's time consuming. Okay. It takes time. So that means you've got to know what questions to ask, and that takes practice. Because L&D people, a lot of our education comes from education, right? So we've taken education classes, or we've taken behavioral science classes. We don't take business classes. Okay. And so now what we need to do is we need to connect ourselves more with the language of business. That's the hard part. Right. And so training yourself to take learning out of your vocabulary when you're talking to business people. So you want to ask them questions that are more associated with business. And sometimes it takes time to get those results because, for example, safety matrix, they're only put out maybe once a quarter, right? Or maybe twice a year. So it takes time to get those figures back, right? So it's not hard, but it takes a little bit of time, and it takes a little bit of digging. So if you have real business questions locked and loaded to be able to talk with your business leaders, then you're going to be more successful. And what I mean by that, when you talk about KPIs, and again, for those listening, KPIs, key performance indicators, all right? So you're looking for what is important to the business. And so you are asking the business, what keeps you awake at night? What is the business pain point? So you're not talking, well, what training program will solve that? That's not the question we want to ask. that means we are jumping to a solution. What we want to do is we want to have a deep, honest conversation with the business and say, what seems to be the struggle? Why is it that salespeople are not selling this product? What seems to be the struggle? And then they
Yeah.
can say, well, the struggle is that they don't understand the new product. Well, why is it that they don't understand the new product? What's happening around them? What's the environment like? Right. So when we're asking business focused questions and not training focused questions, then we're able to set ourselves up for success in a greater way. So it's not hard. It takes practice and it takes time.
Yeah, from if you consider any professional, right, be it like someone like me who is coming from tech background, uh, we try to jump to the solutions rather than getting to the pain point of what needs
Mhm,
the solution first, for what we are finding the solution. I mean,
mhm,
that's really important. So one good takeaway that we are having today is for L&D folks is they need to understand and they need to talk in a business terms, business terminologies, so
mhm.
that they may get a seat at the table in future.
Right. And here's my challenge. Here's my challenge to people listening is I challenge you to talk to a business sponsor, business leader, manager, etc., and not use the words learning, training, course, workshop,
Yeah,
learning
yeah.
management system. Don't use any of those words, right? Do not use learning words and see where you get. And that's going to be a hard challenge for a lot of people because we're built for that. So the good news and bad news of L&D professionals is that when people come to us with issues, we want to solve those issues, right? That's really at the heart of what we want to do. We really do want to be helpful. However, the bad news is because of that, we race to this solutions place. As we're talking, we're automatically trying to think about what training course is it that I could put out there that's going to be helpful. And unfortunately, a lot of times, most times, training is not the answer,
Yeah, yeah.
right? So most times it's a process issue, it's a procedure issue, it's an equipment issue, it's a cultural issue, right? And so
True,
we have
true.
to look deeper into those places and see now how can we help move the needle with those particular barriers without putting another training course in place.
What trends the L&D is gearing towards? What,
Mhm.
what are you seeing if you see, let's say, maybe a couple of years ahead?
Well, forget a couple of years. It's now, right? It's what's happening now. Well, I think we need to work harder at bringing mobile devices into the equation.
Mhm, mhm,
And it's more about, and we've heard this, if you've been in L&D for longer than 5 minutes, you've heard the term learning in the workflow, right?
yeah,
And so
yeah.
what we're talking about here is we're bringing learning to people rather than people to learning. That's what we want to do. Okay, so we
Mhm,
want to shift that paradigm. That's first. And so now the best way, of course, to do that is through people's mobile devices or wherever they live. So if I am an office worker and I'm spending all of my time on my laptop or on my computer, then let's bring courses to them. And as per my previous example, like through email, right?
mhm.
Okay. So can we bring courses through that? Or on our mobile devices, if you're in sales, for example, and you're not in front of a computer all day, can we bring lessons or learning to them through applications like chatbots,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah,
And chatbots meaning that we're having automated conversations go through text messaging.
yeah, yeah.
And studies show that if you know who the text message is coming from, that text
Mm-hmm.
message will be opened 98% of the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
You do not get that kind of response from email.
Of
Okay.
course. Yeah.
So as long as the people know who you are, they're going
Mm-hmm.
to open it and they're going to look and see what's there. And it's so easy to incorporate, again, a small article or a small video or something that's going to remind them of a learning application where they can respond, etc. So now we're bringing the learning to the people, or making you better use of applications like wikis.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So if you think about Wikipedia, right? So that's a crowdsourced knowledge-based program.
Yep. Yep.
Okay. So you could do the same. There's
And
nothing wrong with user-generated content. We're so scared of user-generated content, but
and
nobody
that's
knows.
that's what exactly I was going towards. I mean, people have just taken the wiki as a software and they have put it inside the organizations. And at the end of the day, the admins or the trainers or the learning department is supposed to fill out that wiki. It's not the UI or the software of the wiki that is the magic. It's the user generated content is the magic of wiki.
That's right. That's right. And we often, so you're right. So what we do is we gate it, right? We put a gate that
Yep.
says
Yep.
only the L&D person can go through this gate, as if I'm the one who knows it all. I do not, right? And even the subject matter expert does not, right? Unless the subject matter expert is actually doing the job, then there are other gaps that need to be filled by the people who are doing the job, because there are tips and techniques and tricks and workaround solutions that all could be incorporated into spots like wikis. Now, people always bring up the idea of security,
Mm-hmm.
but what if they're wrong? What if they post something bad? Okay, well, first off, the odds of that happening, yes, it does happen, but it's not it's not an evasive thing. Not everyone is posting everything bad. That's not happening.
Exactly.
Okay,
Exactly.
so now what you have is you have peer moderation. So
Mm-hmm.
your peers will tell you if, gee, that doesn't seem right. Where did you get that idea from? Or here's the other more important bit, is that if you, for example, if you post something on a wiki that is, let's not say bad, let's just say incorrect,
Mm-hmm.
uh, here's the thing, is that you took the time to go into the wiki, type it out, upload it, and step away. So that means you're not the only one doing it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So
Exactly.
now, right. So now what you have an opportunity here is for what I refer to as the gentle redirect. So as the moderator, I can go, oh, where did that come from?
Mm-hmm.
That is
Mm-hmm.
really unsafe. That's an unsafe process that person just posted. Well, so now I can go around the block and I can talk to you and I can say, Prasanna, where did you get that from? Is it, and not in a punitive way, more from a curiosity mindset.
Yeah.
Is
Yeah.
where are you doing this, and are you seeing success? And can you tell me more about this? Because maybe they mistyped, or maybe they left out a
Mm-hmm.
step. You want to
Mm-hmm.
do a thorough interview as to what is really happening, because this is your opportunity to catch the good things and the not so good things. And that's the advantage of user generated content, right? Because
Exactly.
you can catch all of the things that are happening within the organization. And when we think about what's happening now with the great resignation, right?
Mm-hmm.
The great resignation, people are leaving with knowledge of the organization. So your job now as an L&D person is to be that net, to capture all of the organizational knowledge. And this is how you go about that. You can't do that alone. You need user generated content to do that. So Dave, to finish answering your question, I'm sorry, I took a path off the side,
That's
but
okay.
the but the so you've got wikis, you've got chatbots, you've got mobile accessible websites,
Mhm.
you've got programs like there's a video based program that is like TikTok for learning. And the
Wow.
program is actually called Learny, Learnie, Learny. And it's
Okay.
downloadable. You could leave today and find it on the App Store. But it's like, and you can create secured areas for people to upload short videos that show you how to do stuff, right? So
Wow.
again, it's about bringing that learning into the point of need.
The only challenge seems to be that not everything can be taught in the work of flow or workflow in a way. So what are, I mean, how do you solve that, or do you just bifurcate the content, or what can be done?
Well, I think that there are some things that require, and this is where I go back to a blended solution,
Mhm.
right? So, uh, learning in the workflow is just one way of getting people to the knowledge.
Yeah,
That's what you
yeah.
want,
Mhm.
right? And so you're thinking about the overall journey of the learner, of the person. Okay. What does their journey look like? And that's what learning in the workflow is all about, is the learning journey and bringing the journey to the person. So it's not a matter of what can or cannot be taught in the workflow. It's about how are we using the workflow?
Mhm. Mhm.
That would be my comeback to that. And then if you have a properly developed blended solution, then you have that learning map created. You know how people are going to go through it. So maybe, yes, maybe if you're doing something like emotional intelligence, for example,
Mhm.
right? No, you are not going to train or help people with emotional intelligence all through a chatbot. You're that
Yeah,
no.
yeah, yeah.
Okay. But now how are we more smart about it? So while all through a chatbot is not going to be appropriate, neither is sitting people in an 8-hour class. That's not
Yeah,
appropriate
yeah,
either.
yeah.
Okay. So now how do we connect the two? How do you connect the two? And so that then becomes the bigger question. I think people are focusing on learning in the workflow and how it can fail rather than thinking about how it's a successful tool. How
Exactly,
do we use
exactly.
it to be successful? So let's not think about this as, from this could never work. So again, disruption. This could never work rather than thinking about we have this glorious opportunity to take advantage of. How are we using it? Right? Are you curious enough to investigate how all of these different modalities can work together to bring success to your business?
What about the budgets? We do not have budgets. So how do we are there any specific action items or specific steps that low budget, or let's say no budget L&D teams
Mm,
can do? Because I mean, as you know, right? I mean, at the end of the day, the cost center uh, stigma, if I may say,
right. Yeah. Yeah.
that's still there. So how do we overcome that?
Yes. And so if you're working with no budget, low budget, and
Uh,
that is most of us,
Yeah, yeah.
unless 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 you work for a giant enterprise organization, that's where most people sit. There are so again, I would ask you to shift your paradigm as to how learning is delivered.
Mhm.
And so many times we get really hung up on high tech solutions. And oftentimes, high tech solutions are also high cost solutions. But
Yeah,
think low
yeah.
tech. So think low tech. Um, if you are a Google-based organization, take
Mhm.
advantage of Google Sites. So you can build your own website using Google Sites, and that's free.
Yep. Yep.
If you're a Google organization and you let your IT department know that that's what you want to do, and then you can start building that wiki. You can do that for free. You don't need budget for that. You just need time, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But then there's also low tech solutions. Do not disregard the power of a really good checklist, of
Mhm.
a really good handout, right? Of a really good wallet card. Um, an example here that I would give is that uh, way back in the day when I was, working for an organization, rather than putting a lot of the new hire information into a high tech application, we just put some really quick FAQs on little cards, laminated them, attached them to a carabiner that people could
Wow.
hook on their belts and take with them, that immediately answered any questions that a new hire might have. Low tech
Awesome.
solution, low cost
Awesome.
solution, right? Eventually, and this was years ago, once technology kind of caught up, we changed those FAQ cards to QR codes. So then all they had to do is use their phone and scan the QR code and they would find the answer to their question. But
And
again,
we
yeah,
don't need VR AR headsets to do that.
that's right. That's right. Low tech solution, low cost solution. So don't disregard some of the tools that you already have at your hands. Just think differently about how you're using them. That would be my advice. Just with any tool, let's just take our mobile phones, for example.
Mhm.
How often are you actually making a phone call on the thing? Phone
Almost
calls
never.
is probably like I can think of 5 other things I use my phone for other than a phone call.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we have this tool and we use it very differently than the way that it was originally designed for.
True. True. I mean the in a way frugal solutions designed to solve a specific uh, bottleneck,
Mm-hmm.
that is the crux, or that is the need of an hour
Yeah.
for low tech, no budget things.
Yep.
All that.
Think
Yeah.
about low tech, no budget. Well, sort of low tech. You can create a Vimeo account,
Hmm.
right? So Vimeo in of itself can be free if you use it for certain things,
Hmm.
and you create a private channel and you can give people access to that. So you don't have to worry about your videos being out in the world like they might on YouTube, right? So that's just another way of being able to house, information. So there's a lot of tools out there that you can use that are free if
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
use them in a smart way.
Yeah. Yeah. And also, like Vimeo, you can also think of something like wikis. I mean, the wiki software in a way. So how
Yes.
to's and all that is in a way almost free, not fully free maybe.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Really nice way to look at the budgets or no budget scenario. What are you excited about right now? So what keeps you awake at night, or what kind of charges you in the morning? So I mean, it's like, what are the trends that you are excited about?
I am just really excited about the use of mobile.
Hmm.
The use of mobile has been around for a long time. So
Yeah.
this is not new news, but how we're using it now really does excite me. Um, Programs like Mobile Coach, you
Hmm.
can have full lessons, full safety lessons in text messaging, right? That is so exciting because you can have a library. I can text the word tool
Hmm.
and and the whole library will show up and I can grab the tool that I need to grab. Or I could text the word, video, and then the video library will show up for whatever it is that I've designated it for. So it goes now beyond just simple text messaging one to one. It can be chat bots one to many, but
Mm-hmm.
also still very targeted. So I can send it to a certain subset of people and I can
Yeah,
incorporate
yeah.
those lessons. And to me, that is very exciting. So if you can get a little mini website like Engage by Cell has little websites, mobile
Mm-hmm.
specific websites that you can go to, and I can just put all of my sales information right there. And all the salespeople has to do is click the app on their phone and they have access to everything. And that is a beautiful thing. So, again, we're providing help.
Yeah, yeah.
People do not go to work to fail. So how
Exactly.
can we help them succeed? And those couple of tools really energize me because I can see a million possibilities, right? And I think that's the exciting thing about the future. When we consider how training courses are built,
Mhm.
just keep in mind that in general, there are two reasons why training fails. And the first reason is because of lack of learning reinforcement. And the second reason is a lack of feedback mechanism. So,
Yeah,
what
yeah,
that means is we are not bringing management into the equation soon enough. So, when we're planning our training programs, whatever they may look like, we need to bring management in so that they have buy-in and they know what they are supposed to do after the training concludes or during the training process itself. So they know how are they supposed to support people? What's their role? And you have to do that early because no manager wants to be surprised, right? So
yeah,
you don't
yeah.
want to say, by the way, Miss Manager, you've now got to do this, and this. And they're going to go, no, I have a day job. Thank you very much. You've got to bring them in early and often, right? In order to get that sort of buy-in and to get that sort of support.
There is a question from Alicia looking at the L&D trends from many years now. What you think has not changed over time?
Changed over time,
Not
right?
not
What
not
what
changed
remains
over
the
time.
same? Well, a lot of my work is based off of the concept of microlearning. So I've been working in the
Mhm.
microlearning space since about 2016 or so.
Wow.
And um, that has not changed. And so if I go back early in my L&D career, if you use the words like learning nuggets, learning bites, short bursts, if you've
Yeah,
used
yeah.
any of those terms, that means that you've used chunking and you have used microlearning, two different things, by the way, although I won't get on that soapbox right now. Chunking and microlearning, two different things. But both of those things have been around for longer than we give them credit for. And they both need to be used moving forward in order to ensure success of courses. So that would be one thing that I would say really hasn't changed. We've just put a sexier name on it. So microlearning is also performance support,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
And
yeah.
so all of those things we've used in the past that we use now, but we can use them better now because we have better tools.
Okay, okay. One more last question we can take. So any strategies for creating training programs for Gen Z
Gen
workforce?
Z's in the workforce. Excuse me. Uh, Here's my thought is that we go astray when we think we have to create certain training programs for millennials. We have to create certain training programs for boomers. We have to create certain training programs for Gen Zs. I would challenge you to think about just creating solid learning for people,
Mhm.
just for people. Because again, no one comes to work to fail.
Yeah,
Everyone
yeah.
wants to succeed. So what tools are you giving them? And so it goes back also to that learning in the workflow. Your Gen Zs, your millennials, maybe some boomers, but Gen Zs, millennials, nobody wants to sit in a classroom anymore. And no one wants to sit in front of a computer and take one more e-learning course.
Yeah, yeah.
Nobody wants to do that. So now your challenge is to create learning that is interesting and engaging and relevant and targeted and
Yeah.
specific. So if you can do those things, you're going to reach every generation, because Gen Zs, they want to be connected to. Everybody wants to be connected. Everybody wants to be brought into the conversation. So if you think about putting your training into ways that are more engaging for people, then you're going to see greater success,
Mhm,
right?
mhm.
And here's the thing is, people will say, well, how do I make people more interested? Well,
Yeah.
how about if you make your content more interesting, right? In
Yeah.
order for people to be interested, the content has to be interesting,
Yeah. Yeah. Makes sense.
right?
Makes sense.
Yeah. And so a lot of while sometimes it's easy to blame the generations, I say we have to look at ourselves and think about the content that we're putting out.
Yeah. Shannon, thank you so much. I think we are kind of at the limit that we have. So, and thank you very much for spending time with us. And we hope to see you again in Navigate 2023. Uh, and
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.